putting you two together. Do you and Mandices have like anything beyond this film? Or?
No, to be honest, I barely even know him.
Okay.
to be honest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not like, we're cool, but
Yeah.
he's not like my homie. You know what I mean? It's not like that. And he just got casted in the film, and here we are.
Part of the problem with this whole thing was, Tamar, is that I was never comfortable with the relationship that you and Mandices had in front of me, okay? All of that, you at the music video shoot, in your booty shorts, sitting on top of him meeting us up at restaurants every time we met up, I was very uncomfortable.
The room went quiet the moment Tamar Braxton put her head down and stopped speaking. Those close to her say it wasn't the cameras that broke her, it was the fear. The kind that hits when your phone rings with test results you weren't prepared to hear, when doctors use careful language, and when your mind races faster than the facts. According to reports circulating online, Tamar was allegedly dealing with a serious health scare, one that left her shaken, emotional, and struggling to hold herself together. Sources claim Tamar was seen crying privately, overwhelmed by what she had been told and terrified by how quickly rumors began spreading before clarity could arrive. The internet, as usual, moved faster than confirmation. Headlines exploded. Speculation ran wild. And suddenly, Tamar's pain became public conversation. What made the moment even heavier was how personal it felt. Tamar has always been open about her struggles, mental, emotional, physical, and fans immediately sensed this was different. This wasn't drama. This was fear. As whispers about an alleged diagnosis grew louder, one thing became clear. Tamar wasn't breaking down because of gossip. She was breaking down because uncertainty is cruel, and when health becomes a question mark, even the strongest voices can fall silent. And now the world is asking what was really revealed and who spoke before Tamar was ready. To understand why this moment hit so deeply, you have to understand the emotional history that Tamar Braxton carries with her. Tamar has never been just a performer to the public. She has been a witness to her own life on camera. Her pain, her breakdowns, her recovery, and her resilience have all played out in real time, leaving very little space where fear could exist privately. From the earliest days of her career, Tamar was known for her voice and her personality, but also for her emotional intensity. She has spoken openly about depression, anxiety, and moments where life felt heavier than success. Those admissions created a bond with fans, but they also set an expectation that Tamar would always explain herself, always share, always clarify. That expectation becomes dangerous when the issue isn't emotional drama, but health. Over the years, Tamar has faced multiple medical challenges, some of which required hospitalization and long recovery periods. Each time, the public watched closely. Each time, speculation filled the gaps before facts were clear. That history matters because it explains why a new health-related rumor, especially one as serious as what began circulating, would cut deeper than usual. For Tamar, it wasn't just about what people were saying. It was about reliving a cycle she knows too well. Fear first, explanation later, judgment always. Emotionally, Tamar's past also includes betrayal by partners, by systems, and at times by the public itself. She has spoken about trusting people who later spoke for her or about her before she was ready. That history makes silence feel safer, but it also makes it more dangerous. When Tamar doesn't speak immediately, others rush to define the story in her place. According to online reports and fan discussions, the alleged health scare didn't just shake Tamar physically, it reopened emotional wounds. Fear of illness brings vulnerability. Vulnerability brings memories. And memories bring exhaustion. Those close to Tamar reportedly noticed a shift, quieter moments, withdrawn energy, and emotional responses that felt heavier than anything seen recently. What complicates this backstory even further is Tamar's relationship with public scrutiny. She knows how quickly misinformation spreads. She knows how a headline can strip nuance from reality. So when rumors about a diagnosis began circulating before any clear statement from her, it wasn't just invasive, it was terrifying. Health is one of the few areas where even public figures expect humanity to pause. Instead, the noise got louder. There's also the weight of responsibility Tamar carries as a mother, a sister, and a public figure whose life is constantly interpreted by others. Fear isn't just personal in those moments, it's relational. It's about how news, even unconfirmed, can ripple outward and affect the people she loves. That emotional burden doesn't show up in headlines, but it shows up in tears. The emotional history here isn't about confirming or denying anything. It's about understanding why the reaction mattered more than the rumor. Tamar's breakdown, as described by those close to her, wasn't a response to gossip. It was a response to not knowing yet, while the world assumed it already did. By the time this backstory reaches the present moment, one thing becomes painfully clear. Tamar wasn't just facing a health question. She was facing the fear of losing control over her own story again. And when someone has spent years fighting to reclaim their narrative, that fear alone is enough to break even the strongest voice. The main conflict didn't begin with a doctor's office or a confirmed report. It began with loss of control. According to circulating online discussions and secondhand accounts, information about Tamar Braxton's alleged health scares started moving before Tamar herself had fully processed what she was being told. That gap between uncertainty and public speculation became the most damaging space of all. People close to Tamar say the early conversations with medical professionals were cautious, filled with phrases like, "We need more tests," and "Nothing is confirmed yet." But those careful words didn't survive the internet. Somewhere between private fear and public rumor, the message was distorted. What was uncertainty became assumption. What was a possibility became a headline. And Tamar found herself reacting not just to fear, but to a story that was being written without her. That's where the conflict sharpened. Instead of having time to breathe, to gather information, or to decide how and when to speak, Tamar was reportedly forced into emotional defense mode. People began asking questions she couldn't answer yet. Others spoke with confidence about things that hadn't been confirmed. The pressure wasn't just external, it was internal. The mind fills silence with worst-case scenarios, especially when health is involved. The first shocking twist came when observers realized that the most painful part wasn't the alleged diagnosis, it was the premature certainty around it. Tamar wasn't breaking down because something had been confirmed. She was breaking down because the world was acting like it had been. That distinction matters, and it changes how the entire situation should be understood. Sources suggest that Tamar felt betrayed, not necessarily by one person, but by the speed at which sensitive information turned into spectacle. Health scares strip people of their defenses. They make even strong individuals fragile. To experience that vulnerability while watching strangers debate your life online is emotionally destabilizing in a way few people ever face. As the conflict escalated, Tamar's silence became a focal point. Some interpreted it as fear, others as guilt, others as preparation for a reveal. In reality, silence in moments like this often means survival. Tamar has spoken before about needing time to process trauma privately before addressing it publicly. But history worked against her here. Past openness created an expectation of immediate transparency, an expectation that ignored her humanity. The shocking twist deepened when people began questioning who had spoken too soon. The narrative shifted from what is happening to Tamar to why did this information surface before she was ready. That question introduced a new layer of emotional betrayal. Health information is among the most personal details anyone has. When it escapes prematurely, it doesn't just inform, it wounds. What made this moment especially heavy was Tamar's awareness of stigma. Even unconfirmed rumors carry weight when attached to certain words. Those words change how people look at you, speak to you, and judge you. Tamar reportedly understood that even if everything turned out differently, the damage from speculation couldn't be fully undone. Once people hear something, they rarely forget it. By the end of this phase, the conflict wasn't about diagnosis versus denial. It was about dignity versus demand. Tamar was caught between the need to protect herself emotionally and the pressure to address a public narrative that felt invasive and premature. The twist wasn't a revelation of illness. It was the realization that the real harm had already happened, regardless of medical outcomes. Because when fear is paired with rumor, truth arrives too late to prevent pain. And Tamar was now standing in the middle of that storm, not knowing what her body would reveal next, and knowing the world was already deciding what it meant. As the days passed, the situation didn't calm down. It intensified. The escalation wasn't driven by confirmed medical updates, but by interpretation layered on top of fear. Every hour, without a clear statement from Tamar Braxton, allowed speculation to grow louder and more distorted. What began as concern turned into assumption, and assumption hardened into belief for many observers. Social media became the primary engine of escalation. Clips of Tamar from past interviews resurfaced, now framed as signs people claimed they had missed before. Emotional moments that once seemed unrelated were suddenly reinterpreted through a frightening new lens. This retroactive storytelling gave the illusion of confirmation, even though nothing new had actually been revealed. The mind, once afraid, looks for patterns everywhere. The escalation also took a psychological toll. According to people close to Tamar, she became increasingly withdrawn, not because she was hiding something, but because the noise was overwhelming. Health uncertainty already drains emotional energy. Add constant speculation, invasive questions, and public debate, and the weight becomes unbearable. This wasn't just a health scare anymore. It was a crisis of control. Then came the second major twist. Behind the scenes, it reportedly became clear that there was no single, confirmed piece of information driving the rumors. The escalation wasn't fueled by a medical disclosure. It was fueled by repetition. One unverified claim echoed across platforms until it felt real. That realization forced some fans to pause and ask an uncomfortable question. Had the fear outrun the facts? This twist flipped the narrative in a crucial way. Instead of asking what Tamar was hiding, people began asking who benefited from the panic. The focus shifted from Tamar's body to the machinery of rumor itself. Bloggers, commentators, and anonymous sources were suddenly being scrutinized for how quickly they amplified sensitive speculation without confirmation. At the same time, Tamar's silence began to look less like avoidance and more like resistance. By not responding immediately, she refused to legitimize a story that had no solid foundation. But that restraint came at a cost. Silence doesn't stop rumors. It challenges them, and challenges often provoke escalation before resolution. Emotionally, this stage was marked by exhaustion. Tamar was reportedly dealing with follow-up appointments, waiting periods, and the mental strain that comes with medical uncertainty. Meanwhile, the public conversation moved as if everything had already been decided. That disconnect between lived experience and public narrative created a sense of isolation that no amount of support could fully erase. The second twist settled in quietly but powerfully. The most damaging part of the story might not be the outcome of any test, but the way fear was allowed to spread unchecked. Even if clarity arrived, the emotional harm from speculation had already landed. By the end of this part, the tension reached a fragile peak. The audience wasn't waiting for gossip anymore. They were waiting for relief, for a moment of grounding, for Tamar to reclaim her voice on her own terms. But the question remained unanswered. Would clarity come soon enough to stop the damage? Or had the narrative already crossed a line where correction wouldn't matter? Because once fear escalates beyond facts, the truth doesn't arrive as comfort. It arrives as cleanup. By this point, the fallout had spread far beyond Tamar's inner circle. What began as whispered concern had turned into a full-scale public conversation, and the emotional weight of it pressed down on everyone involved, most of all Tamar Braxton herself. The public wasn't just watching anymore. It was reacting, judging, and forming conclusions in real time. Fans flooded comment sections with mixed emotions. Some expressed deep concern and compassion, urging privacy and patience. Others demanded answers, insisting that silence only made things worse. That split created a harsh environment where Tamar's humanity felt secondary to the public's appetite for certainty. In moments like this, empathy competes with curiosity, and curiosity often wins. The emotional toll became visible in how people spoke about Tamar. Language hardened. Speculation grew bolder. Even those who claimed to be worried sometimes crossed into invasive territory, asking questions no one should have to answer publicly, especially without confirmed information. The fallout revealed an uncomfortable truth about celebrity culture. Compassion often has limits when fear and rumor take over. Behind the scenes, those close to Tamar reportedly focused on shielding her from the noise. Health uncertainty already creates vulnerability. Adding public scrutiny multiplies the stress. Tamar has spoken before about how deeply public judgment affects her mental health, and this moment reopened that wound. The breakdown wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, heavy, and deeply personal. The fallout also extended to Tamar's family. When rumors escalate, they don't isolate the individual, they ripple outward. Loved ones are forced to watch someone they care about become the center of speculation, unable to correct the narrative without worsening it. That helplessness adds another layer of pain that rarely gets acknowledged. Publicly, the conversation began to fracture. Some voices called for accountability from those who amplified unverified claims. Others doubled down, arguing that public figures owe transparency. This clash exposed a deeper issue. When does public interest cross into emotional harm? The fallout wasn't just about Tamar, it was about how quickly boundaries dissolve online. As days passed, fatigue set in. Even those following closely began to feel the weight of constant speculation. The story stopped feeling informative and started feeling invasive. That shift marked a turning point in public emotion, from urgency to discomfort. By the end of this phase, one thing was clear. Regardless of outcomes, something irreversible had happened. Trust between Tamar and the public felt strained. The sense of safety she once had in sharing parts of her life openly seemed damaged. And the audience was left confronting its own role in the escalation. Because fallout isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that a line was crossed, and no apology can fully erase it. The final twist didn't arrive with a dramatic announcement or a shocking confession. It arrived with clarity slowly replacing panic, and that's what made it so jarring. According to those close to Tamar Braxton, the medical process that fueled the rumors was still unfolding when the internet had already reached its verdict. Tests were being repeated. Doctors were being cautious. Nothing had been finalized when speculation turned into certainty online. That realization reframed everything. The twist was this. The breakdown wasn't about a confirmed diagnosis. It was about watching fear outrun facts. Tamar reportedly struggled with the emotional damage caused by premature conclusions. Even as she waited for clarity, she was forced to absorb the weight of assumptions that could not be taken back. In moments of health uncertainty, time moves differently. Each hour feels heavy. Each unanswered question feels personal. And when the world fills that silence with guesses, the pressure becomes unbearable. What made this moment especially painful was Tamar's awareness that, no matter what the outcome turned out to be, the rumor had already changed how people saw her. Labels stick, even when they're wrong, even when they're corrected. That reality created a quiet fear deeper than any headline, the fear that truth might arrive too late to undo the harm. The cliffhanger now rests on a fragile edge. Will Tamar choose to speak openly once clarity is fully established, reclaiming her narrative in her own words? Or will she decide that silence is the only way to protect herself from a cycle that keeps repeating? Both choices carry risk. Speaking invites scrutiny. Silence invites speculation. And that's what makes this moment unresolved. There is no clean ending, only a decision waiting to be made. What remains clear is this: Tamar's breakdown was not weakness. It was the human cost of living in a world where health scares become headlines before they become facts, where vulnerability is consumed faster than it is understood. The story pauses here, not because it's over, but because the next move belongs to Tamar. And whatever she chooses will shape not just the narrative, but how much of herself she's willing to share with a world that didn't wait. That's the cliffhanger. Because the loudest part of this story may already be behind us, but the most important part hasn't been told yet. This is where the story pauses, but it doesn't end. What we've witnessed around Tamar Braxton is bigger than rumors or headlines. It's a reminder of how quickly fear can replace facts, and how easily a person's most vulnerable moment can turn into public speculation. Tamar's emotional reaction wasn't about drama. It was about uncertainty, pressure, and the loss of control over her own narrative. So now we ask you, how much privacy does a public figure deserve when it comes to their health? Should Tamar have been given space before the internet decided her story for her? And at what point does curiosity turn into harm? Imagine being in her position, waiting for answers while the world acts like it already has them. Would you speak up immediately to protect your name? Or would you stay silent to protect your peace, even if it meant being misunderstood? This conversation matters because it's not just about Tamar. It's about how we react to sensitive information, how we share it, and how quickly we forget that real people are behind these stories. Drop your thoughts in the comments, but keep them respectful. This isn't about picking sides. It's about empathy, awareness, and learning where the line should be drawn. If you want more deep, thoughtful breakdowns that slow down viral moments and focus on the human side of the story, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. Because some stories don't need more noise. They need understanding. And whatever Tamar chooses to share next, if she chooses to share it all, you'll want to be here when her voice, not speculation, finally leads the conversation.